We're at the point where we're looking for the adoption of the agenda, but before we do that, is there any additions or changes? Director Gabias.
Thank you. Yes, I would like to add an item of new business. Let's call it Letter to MOTT regarding rural areas 2026 priorities.
Thank you for that. Is there any other changes, additions? Not seeing any. I'd like to have a motion to adopt the agenda with the amendment. I've got a seconder. All those in favor? And that passes. Thank you. I'd also like to have a motion to accept all reports from the agenda. I've got a mover, seconder. All those in favor? And that passes. Thank you. So our first topic is 4.1 on page 3, Development Approvals Process Review, or DAPR as we call it, Implementation Progress. It's an update for information. GM Hall, would you like to introduce that? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Over the last 7 quarters, staff have been working on a set of tasks to improve SCRD's development application processing. Progress is tallied in this report and in the attachment. The key focus, as noted in the report, in the coming 2 quarters is development of a procedures manual and updating public-facing documents, work that is 100% grant funded. Staff are happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Directors, questions? Go ahead.
Sure. Easy one. Is the project on time?
Go ahead, staff.
Thank you. The project is on time from the point of view of meeting the targets set in the planning service plan and following board direction. The original consultant recommendations had a 2-year roadmap to implementation. Those roadmaps don't always work in the real world when there are competing priorities for both resources and customer service. Thanks.
Do you have a follow-up, Director McMahon?
Yeah. So part of the reason for the project, if I remember, it seems like a long time now, was that making our planning processes more efficient would free up staff time to work on other priorities. Is that working out?
GM Hall.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, in a number of cases, staff are able to identify time savings coming from improved processes and subtle automations. The single biggest leap forward in efficiency will be updated policy frameworks. And that is one of the actions that was recommended by the consultant that undertook the process audit. And that work, as the committee knows from the reports on the agenda, is well underway. Thank you.
Director Bax, did you have a question?
Yeah, I wanted to point out the graph on page 6, which is amazing. I love the progress that's being made in this, and I'm sure that the public, the developers especially, would really like to know that there is an efficiency going on here. Now, we've changed some of the, if I can talk about the finances of the planning department a little bit. We've changed the fees structure for this department so that it's no longer subsidized. And I was wondering if I could hear back from staff at some point about what the level of reserves are within this department and where those reserves would naturally stay. My question has to do with the fairness of the fees structure that we have, and to make sure that we're not holding back too much reserves within the department, that it pays for itself, but we're not holding back a lot of money. I know I'm probably not going to get an answer about this now, but I just wanted to bring it up because we're talking about planning.
Staff, I mean, this is a little bit outside the report itself. If you have anything to add or provide sort of background information that we can move forward on.
Thank you, Chair. Updating fees to reflect cost recovery as guided by the Local Government Act was one of the actions that consultants recommended. That work has occurred, and 2 fee reviews have been conducted over the last 2.5 years. And our fees are now at a point where we are seeing a level of cost recovery that is similar to other local governments. Thank you.
Director Lee, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was trying to correlate the original timelines that the consultant suggested with the timelines that are in the tables on the report. Would the dates in that table, if they are met, deliver on the 10 on the 10 recommendations of the consultant? The table actually seems to line up with the consultant's recommendations, by the way. I was just looking at it. The words aren't quite all there on the left, but I'm sure that they're meant to be. So my question is, will this project actually be done on, most of it is Q2 2026? Is that what our target is?
GM Hall, do you have anything to add on the timeline?
Thank you, Chair. So staff undertake annual service planning, and through the corporate work plan, there's a new level of integration across the organization for that work. We're approaching the 50% mark on completion of this project in a little under 2 years. Staff's projection at the moment is that this work will probably take about another 2 years to complete. The additional note would be a number of these actions are not the kind of thing that are one and done. Procedures, once formalized, need to be maintained. So while we may get to a state where I'm pleased to report a progress tally that shows items have achieved completeness, there will be ongoing work related to continuous improvement needed to keep up the improvements. Thank you.
Does that answer your question? I have a follow-up as well, so go ahead.
A little clarification. I understand whenever you do a policy or procedure or guidance on work to be done, that has to be maintained and updated on an ongoing. But I didn't see that included in the original consultant's report. As I see the project as done once it's the process and procedures are there, because all processes and procedures need to be updated regularly, especially work procedures. So what strikes me is, do we need, rather than extend the timeline for these things, it seems like we would just need to establish a budget to keep them current. I'm wondering if that's the thoughts on this, or if I have that correct.
Is there any further comments, GM Hall? It sounds like, what is the scope of the project in terms of just procedures outside of that? And I have a question related to that afterwards.
Thank you for the opportunity to clarify. This project will have an end, and then after the end of this extraordinary project, we will move into a sustainment phase that we will look to build into our operations. And resources may be required, whether they're incremental or reallocated is a future decision. Thank you, Chair.
And I'd just like to add, my understanding was part of this project was the OCP and the recommendations were around consolidating OCPs to provide that efficiencies as well. So I think that's could be considered part of the overall goal. Director Lee?
Well, I do have a question about what involvement the OCP does have on DAPR, because I can't really see that by reading the original report or the little squares here. I'm unsure why we would wait for the OCP to finish this project.
I hope I haven't opened a can of worms, but Jam Hall, yeah, what is the relationship between the official community plan project and DAPR?
Thank you, Chair. So one of the recommendations from the consultant's report was to improve existing policy frameworks. That isn't solely focused on the official community plan, though that is a foundational document in our policy framework. As reported in this summary, we also have the building bylaw and plumbing bylaws, which are modernized. And then coming out of the work that's planned for the next couple of quarters, we anticipate having recommendations for updates to the procedures bylaw as well. So there are a number of policy documents that are recommended for update. Thank you.
No? Can we keep moving, and then if something becomes more clear, is someone to ask? Yeah. Director McMahon, did you have another question?
Sure. I am, even as we speak, looking at the active development applications map, which is great. We've been waiting for this for a long time. But one of my questions is the seashell map, interactive map, has a lot more information than ours does. So is this a work in progress that is going to be expanded upon?
Director Hall, or GM Hall, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. We do have a few ideas for technical improvements to improve user function. Staff would be happy to receive feedback about the scope of information and provide answers that might be specific to the type of information that's being sought. Thank you.
Director Gabias, do you have a question?
Yeah, a quick one. Counter hours, glad to see that there was an increase there. I'm wondering if there is a targeted, like, what are we aiming for? Is there a specific aim of how many counter hours we're going for, or are we just kind of gradually increasing, or are we good with 3?
Staff?
Thank you, Chair. That's a difficult question to answer, as we don't have a set of detailed indicators. But gauging by utilization of those resources relative to utilization of other avenues of customer engagement and the level of feedback, positive and complaints, the current level of service seems to be working. As we move more tools online, we're seeing a shift, we estimate at 50% away from in-person service towards other avenues. Thanks.
Thank you. Director McMahon, you have another question?
Yep. I always love metrics, so if we get more metrics, that would be better. But no matter how much we improve our processes, we are at the mercy of other agencies as well, such as MOT and PCH. How are their timelines doing? Are we still struggling to get response?
GM Hall?
Thank you, Chair. Certainly there are challenges with other agencies, and the recent provincial labor disruption did not help our colleagues in those areas with their backlog. Staff are pleased to share, though, that we have functional communication relationships with agencies, and so are generally able to get information about where things are in the queue. That helps our customer service to our usually local customers. Thanks.
Director Lee.
Thank you, Chair. There was 6 broad categories mentioned in the report that needed attention, and 2 of them actually are kind of tied together. It's technology and information and performance management and KPIs. It kind of says you need the technology, and then you can actually create the KPIs logically. I can't tell from the timeline when those things might be done, you know. Should I be looking at some, I even see something that says it might happen in 2026, which alarms me a little. So if you could comment on that.
GM Hall, do you have anything to add to that?
I do. Thank you, Chair. There are a number of foundational tasks, including documentation of practices and procedures that are required before we move into technology and the potential of automation. I'm pleased to share that between the time this report was published and today's meeting, the planning work towards the 2026 Planning Division Service Plan that includes an information technology component has moved forward. And so I expect that in our 2026 plan, there will be action on some technology pieces that include some automation pieces and some measurement and metrics pieces. Thanks.
Okay. I see no further hands about this report. There was no decision on this particular report. It's an update. So I'd like to thank staff. And if we're ready to move on to the next item, which is 4.2 SCRD, Official Community Plan Organizing Framework. And we have decisions on that. And that starts on page 16 for people looking at the package.
Thank you, Chair. And staff have a few slides to introduce this report. So today we'd like to talk to you about a land use organizing framework. And I'll speak about the purpose of this decision, how it fits into the project, and then go through a few slides with some illustrations about the sort of practical definition of what this is, before finishing up with a summary of the evaluation of options as included in the report. And so we're here today bringing you a report about how we want to talk about land use in the official community plan. And there's a time element to this. I'll bring the timeline up in a moment. This will drive how we talk about growth when we move into the second round of public participation starting in January. And it has the potential to shape the table of contents for a future document eventually. There are many decisions between here and there. This doesn't bind us or prescribe any particular policy. And it's about a frame. It's not about the picture within it. And so just as a reminder of the project timeline, I know the committee has seen this with our project update reports. We have completed the first round of public participation, and we've heard from over 2,000 people. We're moving towards the next round of engagement that will use those results as well as technical inputs and is planned to start in January. And the decision that this report and the next one on the agenda, the decision relates to how we design round 2 engagement and the work that we do before we bring you the next major board check-in in June. So what is an organizing framework? When we talk about land use in planning, it shows up in a number of ways. In the official community plan, it's at the level of a vision. In a zoning bylaw, it tends to be more technical. Lots of rules about uses, very specific uses. We're here to talk about the OCP way of thinking about land use, so broad categories today. And when we talk about those categories, we're talking about the types of activities that take place, character, the services and amenities that are in an area, and what's needed to support the area in terms of utilities, the overall vision for the area. And there's just an example image in the top right. From a zoning point of view, we can see all kinds of land uses there. But if you think about it as at the level of vision, it is, we could come up with policy language, a vibrant mixed-use area that has a pedestrian focus and includes different forms of housing. It's at that level that an organizing framework thinks about land use. And there are different ways of categorizing land use in an OCP, a single focus approach or an integrated approach. In the single focus approach, we might look at a map, and so this sort of tablet-shaped thing here, if we imagine that that's a map and there's a highlighted piece of land there, and we might describe that piece of land in terms of recreation. That's our little icon there, outdoor recreation. And that might be its own policy area. We might have a separate section in our document, or we might have totally separate policies that relate to agriculture for that same piece of land, and on and on. And in many of our official community plans on the Sunshine Coast, we'll see 10, 15 different categories of policy. A different way of describing land use is to take a given geographic area. So here we have our same little tablet map, same parcel, and we're going to talk about all the kinds of policy that attach to it at the same time. And if you think about this as a table of contents, so same two categories, or same two options here. On the left, we've got multiple layers of policy that could apply to any given parcel of land. On the right-hand side, many of the same categories of policy, but thought about at the geographic level as the entry point to describing the land use. And I point out two things about this comparison. On the left, if you were interested in understanding what's going on a particular piece of land, you might be flipping pages 6 or 9 times to get the whole picture, and you'd assemble it in your mind. And the other thing to say is, in the left-hand example, there is actually buried in there, point 6, there is an example of an integrated land use framework. So, and we have examples in multiple OCPs on the Sunshine Coast of this integrated way of developing policy. And if we think about what kinds of land use designations might make sense, and we start to think about differences, commonalities, and uniqueness in different areas, we can group different geographies by intensity of use. And we've used this graphic as a way of talking about all the different kinds of ways that we develop on the Sunshine Coast a few times. It's a very theoretical graphic. But here you can see that if we look at our little adventure recreation icon, that might be the kind of thing where we really only need policies in a couple of land use areas. And there might be others, like our agriculture icon, that in this, again, very theoretical graphic, apply in almost all land use designations. And just to call back to that purpose slide at the beginning, the decision today is just about what kind of approach we want to use, not about what the categories are or what the policy areas are. That's the picture within the frame, and that's what our next round of public participation is about. So then, to summarize what's in the report, as we think about those two ways of talking about land use, why choose one way versus another? So staff evaluated those options against the board's direction on the OCP renewal project. And our observations, as captured in the report, are that an integrated approach has the potential to be more user-friendly. There's change if you're used to a particular way of orienting to a document, but staff's assessment would be that with any new bylaw, there's always a period of change. In terms of the integration of the regional growth baseline strategy, the integrated approach provides a clear link to regional growth management, since we can talk about intensity of use in a coherent way. And for directors who might recall the regional growth baseline study in 2023, you might remember those heat maps, sort of which areas are more suitable for development and which areas have more challenges. Those were multi-criteria maps that integrated all those layers of policy. And on the third one, since it provides the whole picture, an integrated approach supports clearer, more legible planning and decision-making around all SCRD and other public or community services. And we do this intuitively when we think about where does it make sense to site a new playground, a new community hall. We're making that assembly in our mind. And on the last 2 points, the focus pillars that the board directed and legislative alignment, both approaches are equally capable of achieving those board directions. And so in summary, the first 3 of these areas of board focus, there seem to be real benefits for users and SCRD to the integrated approach, hence its recommendation in the report. And staff also wanted to note that this responds to what we heard. The messages that we reported on with the What We Heard report last month included takeaways around connection to nature, to services, concentrating housing and growth with other uses, development along key mobility networks, infrastructure that supports sustainable development. And we note that those are community desires that bridge multiple policy areas or multiple services at the local level. And so then just getting back to the purpose statement at the beginning, the organizing framework is just the frame, it's not the picture. We need local knowledge. For example, we need to know what goes on in each of those categories and each of those policy lines under each area and help spotting solutions. The governance level decision on the organizing framework leads into engagement design in round 2. We'll be inviting input on specific questions flowing from round 1 and informed by technical inputs in that next phase. And advisory planning commissions, as our local context advisors on this project, will be provided an information package as a next step as we lead towards a workshop tied to round 2. And staff are happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Directors, where would you like to start? Director Lee.
As I was reading pretty much all of these reports, I was wondering if we should have referred them to our APC first or after the board decision. I'd be interested in staff's comments on the timing of such a thing.
Staff, would you like to provide some input on that?
Thank you, Chair. So in the engagement strategy for the project that the board endorsed, APCs were charged with being local context advisors. And staff have staff have designed in a role with specific intersections with APCs, interspersed with capacity building and information sharing work in between. The key intersections are marked on the project timeline that was endorsed last year. And as we learn more from each round, we're constantly thinking about how best to build up our community volunteers serving on those commissions in support of the board's direction on the project. Thanks.
Okay. Director Bax.
Yeah, thank you. Very interesting report. I'm looking at the last sentence on page 18, the first sentence on page 19, whereas the Cowichan Valley took 160 land use designations and reduced them to 20 in this type of exercise, and we have 109 land use designations. And it says 78 are unique. And so I was wondering if there's any idea as to how this is all going to shake out. Like, what are we going to end up with, I wonder? Is it going to be 20? Is it going to be more or less? Or is that, I don't know if staff even knows at this point, but it's an interesting question.
Any idea about the numbers at the end of the game?
Thank you, Chair. No.
You have a follow-up, do you?
It's not really a follow-up, but it's another question. So in the next bullet point, it says that you'll be integrating local character into land use policies. Now, we talked about creating chapters to capture the uniqueness of of each of our areas. Excuse me. And I was wondering how that integrating and capturing the local character, if there's an idea as to whether that's going to be in the body of the OCP or whether it's going to be like an appendix, or how staff envisions that appearing.
So that is slightly outside of the question of the report, but let's find out if there's any vision right now as to actually how that's going to look. Staff, do you have a response?
Thank you, Chair. Staff are aware of the need, as we've heard from the community and as the board has charged us with, to find a way to ensure that area character is represented in this project. There are a number of tools within or outside of an OCP that can accomplish that. At this stage, staff are not recommending a particular approach. I can clarify that the two broad options that are proposed or offered here for an organizing framework are equally capable of coping with that need. Thank you.
Director McMahon.
Yeah, I'm struggling to understand this. So I pulled out my land use map for my OCP, and there are 15 designations. So that suggests to me that perhaps every OCP has unique designations, which would be challenging, I can see. But the single use, like agricultural, tells me immediately what the primary priority is on that piece of property. And if it says residential, I assume that's the primary priority. And if, my neighbor builds a factory in their backyard, I have got some grounds to be concerned, or at least they wouldn't be allowed to do that. So if we start changing this, how does that work? And is it clear to the public what the intent of the land use for the different designations is?
Staff?
Thank you, Chair. The desire to have a legible, usable document will require careful work with you and with the community to design and label the columns and rows in whatever form of OCP we might consider going forward. In the director's comment, the example of a residential land use, and here I'm careful to separate residential as might exist in an OCP versus residential zoning, because as I mentioned in my slides, the two are a bit different. We have multiple kinds of residential land use classifications in OCPs. Some are more, some are less different from each other. In an integrated organizing framework, a difference that we might see would be we might call something a more intense form of residential development or a less intense form of primarily residential development. And the difference might be, and this may not exist now in some areas, where we have a broad land use classification in an OCP where some areas are served by transit, some are not. Some are served by a community drinking water system or a wastewater treatment plant, and some are not. And as we think forward to community vision and how those areas might grow and change, that could be really divergent even within a single existing land use classification. Thanks.
Any follow-up?
Oh, sure. Yep, still. I think I just blanked. I'm sorry, I'll be
No,
back.
wait, we're going to keep moving on. Does everybody, I got questions on this side? I'm going to move over to the other side, the left side, to Director Gabios.
Thank you. Well, I was gonna put the motion, move the recommendations, so I don't know if anyone wants to ask more questions prior to me doing that.
Do I have further questions before we put the motion on the table? Director McMahon?
Well, we can always put a motion on the table,
Yep.
but I have lots more questions.
I have lots more.
And the next one was, over 160 land use designations is obviously cumbersome and very awkward. Could we decrease that without going to integrated categories?
Staff?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, certainly. And in response to that question, and also the prior one about trying to forecast a number of categories, until we've worked through the next phases of this project, staff are not at a stage to predict or project where we might end up. There are many more questions to be asked and answered. Thank you.
Director Lee?
No one seconded Director Gabius's motion, did they? Oh, she didn't put it forward yet? Okay. I'm struggling along the same lines as Director McMahon, so maybe I could ask a clarifying question. When I originally started thinking about land use designations and the ability to limit them, I was going from all our OCPs and seeing if we had the same description, we were just calling it something different. And so in my mind, we would have about a dozen of them in the end of the day, maybe 24 at the most, not 109. The reason we have 109 is we put different labels on the same description. So I'm wondering now with the integrated approach, because it's new to me and I haven't read any that use the integrated approach to fully understand it. I wish I had had time to do that. But the question is, will we have a general description in the OCP, and then when we go to the zoning bylaw, we're going to have this map with the hard descriptions by property?
Staff, can you provide a bit more clarification of how this would play out in the zoning?
Thank you, Chair. Zoning will need to provide clarity on regulations for each parcel. There are, similar to the OCP, there are questions to be asked and answered about how specific the community wants the zoning bylaw to be. We have examples of comprehensive development zones existing that are quite flexible. We also have very prescriptive zones, and often there are reasons behind them. The choice of an integrated versus single-focused approach for a land use organizing framework doesn't preclude using zoning as a tool. Thanks.
Director Bax.
So if I'm to understand this correctly, there would be an OCP land use category that could be applied to a specific property, but within the zoning bylaw, there could be multiple zones that would describe this property and its uses.
Staff, could you clarify?
Thank you, Chair. I'll try. Largely today in SCRD, our OCPs have a land use classification that matches a zoning classification. Often, in an integrated approach, we might be more likely to see, and I used the word, I was trying to pick a very general term, rural, in the graphics. Within a rural integrated land use classification, we might see zoning for agriculture, for residential. There may be service or public assembly zoning as well.
Director McMahon.
So everybody's doing OCPs right now. So what kind of approach are the municipalities taking, and how would our integrated approach fit in with that?
Staff?
Thank you, Chair. So in the work that's underway in District of Sechelt and Town of Gibsons, we're seeing examples of integrated land use frameworks, urban categories that blend service, light industry, multiple use properties. Staff haven't undertaken a sort of a careful evaluation of how thoroughly integrated those emergent examples are. Thanks.
Okay, are we ready for a motion? Director Gavious, if you'd like to present the motion.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair. And I really appreciate the presentation from staff. That was great to see some examples too, really helped me wrap my head around it. It can seem a little hard to grasp sometimes, like I've never gone through an OCP process, so it's good to have some grounding examples. I appreciated that. This seems to fit nicely in our desire to have a user-friendly, streamlined, more efficient document. So I'm happy that staff is proposing this. I think I like the idea of the frame and the picture. And, if we can have you pick the right frame, it really serves the picture well and really makes it pop. So good. I think I'm in agreement with staff on this one. So I'll move the recommendations on page 16. And then I'll just have a question when,
So quickly, do I have a seconder? Director Bax, and do you want to follow up with a question?
yeah, I'm just wondering, like, resource-wise, the two options, how do they compare? Are they pretty much the same? When we're talking at staff time, timeline, are they about comparable?
And that's within the OCP project, not necessarily the administration of the OCP. Staff?
Thank you, Chair. I think for the OCP project, and probably the administration of it as well, the two approaches here are relatively comparable. The life cycle difference, though, with an integrated approach is that by integrating servicing policy seamlessly, the future decision-making that, and this goes back to those three, the five areas that the board asked for focus on this project, and there's three where there are benefits to the community and the organization long-term. The future decision-making about service planning will be much more efficient, and it'll be much more legible. Not to say the decisions will be easy, but this is a tool that where an integrated approach will provide benefit over the life cycle of the OCP. That's probably the biggest difference between the two. Thank you.
Director Bax, further comments?
Yeah, so what I've see here on page 21, right about the middle of financial considerations, that should we not pick this integrated approach, that the savings that we're looking to realize through this application of this OCP renewal will most likely not be realized. So if we don't do this, it's going to cost more money if we don't implement the integrated approach. It's just going to make we're going to have more status quo. It's going to be the whole purpose behind this is to make things a bit easier for everyone to understand and to use.
I don't think there was a question there, but a comment. Director Lee and then Director McMahon.
It was just little clarification on the last comment. I believe that having a common OCP with an integrated approach, we actually will be able to keep it current, whereas we just plain couldn't keep our OCPs current with 9 with all different approaches. So I'm in favor of the integrated simply because I believe it'll allow us to more easily keep it updated and current over the next 10 years. So just a comment.
Director McMahon.
I think I am beginning to get an inkling of what this is about, but frankly, I still don't understand it. And that makes me leery to vote yes when I do not fully understand the implications of the decision that we're making. Some examples from another OCP would be awfully helpful in my getting my head around this, because if I don't understand it, I certainly can't explain it to my community. And perhaps this is a better, more flexible, more a better tool to take. But in the absence of being able to understand it, I'm reluctant to take the leap. So that's where I sit right now.
Any further comments, Director Lee?
I must say, Director McMahon actually clarified what was in my mind. Is I couldn't figure out how to explain it to my community still. I was hoping I could go look at one and to point to it to help me explain it. It's probably a leap of faith if I vote on it today. positively. I have to make up my mind here shortly, don't I? Yeah.
Further comment, Director McMahon?
Yeah, I will point out that one option is to talk to our APCs and get some further direction. I'm just feeling really over my head, and yeah, little leery.
Director Gavios?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I don't know, I think the APC should have this for information, for sure, but I think what we want the APCs to do is help us with the picture. And so the frame is, I don't know that it's something that we need to get their input on in order to make that decision, for me anyway. And like, I'm wondering, Director McMahon, like what would help get a better understanding? Is it like seeing one that already exists and what that looks like? So is the Cowichan one?
I went to the Cowichan one and I couldn't figure it out. I went to one of the rural chapters and it looked just like mine. It had mobile home park, residential A, B, C. So I couldn't quite figure out what the difference was. And so that's really what I want to get clarity on, is exactly the implications. And if my APC can't understand it, then that's not good. And I agree with you, though, that the APC is primarily for the local input. But yeah.
Is there anything you can add, staff, to help provide just a little bit more clarity, like speaking to other models that are already out there? I felt they were more community-based when I read the other models, but I haven't read hundreds of different OCPs, so it was hard to differentiate. But I just found they were more readable for community to understand the overall concept rather than just an individual aspect of their particular community. So that's the difference that I found. It was more holistic in describing the land designation goals for that area. That's the difference I found. But maybe if there's anything further we can suggest to the board members to find out some more.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, staff would be happy to pass along examples or have a workshop or other form of dialogue that's helpful. The most legible examples that I'm aware of come from an urban context, which requires a bit of transposing. But there are examples of urban areas where OCPs have categories, land use categories or land use designations, like areas of stability, which are areas where services are expected to be kind of the same going forward. That's the community vision, low change. Areas of reinvestment, where there are combined storm and septic sewer systems that need to be separated to avoid sewer overflows, or where kind of Main Street investment type programs to deal with economic decline are needed. And maybe a third category for new communities where services haven't been established yet. And the uses of land within those areas are multi, but the policy needs to support the community vision for that area, which might be framed as a healthy, vibrant, complete community. They might look very different. Like you might need very different policies in an area that's suffering economic decline and has deficient infrastructure. And on the Sunshine Coast, we have areas that have very little in the way of piped or other linear kinds of infrastructure. Not to say that there aren't community needs in terms of new policy for those areas. And we have areas that, when we talked to people last summer with you, we heard people were interested in, they're interested in growth there that could help solve some of the problems that they're seeing, be that access to groceries or getting on the bus or whatever. And so if we think about all the different broad categories of land that we have to plan for, the integrated approach is about finding what's common for those areas, and maybe it's 5, maybe it's 20, maybe it's, I don't know, we'll hope it's not 109. And then writing policy that's tailored to the vision for that area. And as we do that, thinking about how all the pieces come together so that if we want to see affordable housing that is accessible, we've already baked in policy that would support future transit route planning, fire flow upgrades, community hall proximity, all the kinds of things that fit with that vision for the area. Thanks.
Okay, so just a few more questions. We still have a lot of meat to go through on this agenda. So Director Bax.
No, I don't like to do this lightly, but I move that we postpone this matter until the EAS. Yes, this is the right time to do it. To just postpone this matter until the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting in December. I require a second for that and a majority vote. Yes, we do. It's the last meeting of the year.
Director Bax is looking for a seconder.
No, this is
No,
the time
I think
to
it goes
to
right
do it.
in.
That motion is in order, and you should not debate it, so you need to vote on it.
I'm not seeing, oh, we got a seconder.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we have a motion to defer. And there's no debate. So all those in favor? And that motion does not pass. So we have a current motion sitting on, that's ready to go. Any other comments or questions? Director McMahon and Director Lee, and then we'll vote.
Okay, some examples would be helpful of where our current land use designations are not helpful in the OCPs. Perhaps you could anonymize the case studies, but I know that I think one of the difficulties we have is what is rural? A rural land use designation probably doesn't mean the same thing to each person. And I'm not sure that it adequately describes the vision for the land. So maybe that would be an example of something that we could look at and look at the two different approaches and how they would work.
Director Lee?
Just a process question to get things straight in my mind. If any decision we make now still has to go to the board for approval, so we can perhaps get some clarity between now and then. I'm very, very hesitant to do anything that might delay the OCP, so hence my vote. Yeah, I really, by the time board comes around, I need to understand more on this. So that's my thoughts.
Okay, I see no other comments. Oh,
Just that the recommendation to ask the board to identify any specific aspects we wish to refine. So I don't know, just flag that just so if directors have anything they want to bring up?
Yeah, that number 2 is, I don't have anything specific, but I'm just trying to think it's important that we take the time to really understand. And we do have the opportunity to come back to this, so. So seeing no other hands or comments, I'd like to call a vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Would you like your vote recorded? And that will be recorded. And yes, we were looking at a 10:30 break, so 5-minute break, please. Thank you. EAS meeting, and we're now on to 4.3, technical memos. And staff, would you like to introduce us?
Thank you, Chair. So over the last few months, and particularly with October's status report, staff have brought to the committee's attention some of the technical inputs that are feeding into the official community plan. We also had a delegation back in July that spoke to some upcoming reports that we now have and are referenced in this today's report. The October status report had about 3 pages listed out of existing studies that we were using as inputs. This report is about 6 more new ones. And these are not policy recommendations, but rather these are things that will inform the technical analysis and the discussions during round 2 public participation kicking off in January. And their role is to provide an evidence base for informed policy making. They also assist SCRD in meeting provincial requirements, including the Bill 44 SHMU stuff and housing requirements, and other parts of Section 473 of the Local Government Act, which is the section that has the long list of must-dos for official community plans for things like climate change mitigation, hazard mitigation, and sensitive ecosystem protection. And so the decision today is about whether the studies will inform the OCP renewal process. So as I said, these are not policy prescriptions, and on any of these topics, future decisions will be needed. And we can expect that more information will be coming into the project, including future rounds of public participation as well. So these are going into the mix. Oops, there we go. And relative to the 2 pillars established by the board, these 6 items provide opportunities to strengthen those 2 pillars. And as noted here, when you line them up, there are some overlaps. So some of these have co-benefits by addressing both pillars. So, for example, measures to address ecosystem resilience or sustain green infrastructure may also increase community safety and resilience, which helps strengthen the housing pillar. So I now have a very brief summary, very, very brief summary of each memo. And in the room with us today, we have GM Rosenboom and senior planners Clark and Thompson as technical resources if there are questions on these after I go through a high-level summary. So the first one is the housing primer, and this builds on the housing needs report and provides additional information that can be used to fulfill the requirements set out in Bill 44. And just some notes on limitations on this one. There's more analysis that staff are working on related to housing affordability, and we have multiple times in this room acknowledged the limitations of housing needs report data. There is a primer on greenhouse gas emission reduction targets, and this one is really an outline of work that will be done in next steps. This is one of those requirements in Section 473 of the Local Government Act. We have the natural assets inventory that we've talked about with you previously. This is an important data set that provides insights on where and how ecosystems and ecosystem services might be planned into our future OCP. A limitation on this one to note is it is just a desktop study. We have a utility servicing analysis. This is summary level. There is a breakdown by electoral area. There isn't new information presented here, but altogether it gives a whole picture that we haven't looked at as an organization recently. And just a qualification on this is information at this stage. It's not all of the analysis needed to prepare policy, but again, it can inform the kinds of questions that we take to the community in the next round of public participation. We have the pilot mapping for conservation, climate, and resilience planning. So this is the material that was introduced to the committee in July by the delegation, and we now are very grateful to have that information provided to us. And lastly, we have a green bylaws report for the Sunshine Coast. This one was also referenced in that July delegation, and staff's observation is that while it provides potential strategies going forward, it does need local synthesis with other project inputs to understand how this information might best be utilized on the Sunshine Coast. And the report recommends that these 6 technical memos be added to the list of inputs for the OCP renewal process. Pending board direction, they'd be shared through the project website, and an information memo to APCs would be prepared with opportunities for discussion as part of round 2 engagement. And staff, including the technical leads in these areas, are here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I recognize there's a lot in here, and I really like the term primer. I think that provides a better sort of description of what you're seeing here. This is, among a lot of other inputs that we're expecting, but I've seen these kind of things before in other OCP process, and we called them discussion papers. It also provided background to for us to be able to refer anybody who's asking about background on particular questions. And it gives us a sort of sense to how to go back for community members to be able to sort of get a sense of what the background, where we're coming from. But I also recognize that each of these papers has a different level of input and technicality to it and background, so they're not exactly apples and oranges or apples to apples. They're different levels of information and quality and quantity. So I recognize there's some questions around here. So I thought I would just introduce it that way. And I think we had originally talked about, is there any of these reports here that we can look to approve and move forward on? Or do you want to pull specific ones rather than going through each one individually? Because I think we could get bogged down for hours on this. But I'm just trying to get a sense from the board if there's any that we're comfortable with. So I'll start with Director McMahon.
I just have a high-level question about the natural assets inventory, but I'm pretty much fine with reports 2, 3, 4, and 5. The housing report is the one that I have the most concern about and the most questions about.
Shall we, I'll get a sense from other members, board members, and then I'll come back to you about the housing one. How do other board members feel? Director Barris.
I just have a couple of questions about the report number 5, the mapping one.
So I'm not seeing anything specific. So I'm not sure if we should, I don't think we should need to approve the others right now, but I would like to hear more about, Director McMahon, you have some questions about the housing report.
Yeah, from a standpoint of our whole OCP process, I guess my question is, at what point is the board going to say that the emperor has no clothes? Because these housing needs assessments that were wished on us by the provincial government, because of the method that they prescribed for these reports, they're inaccurate. And they're missing a lot of critical information about rural areas, and they ignore the fact that you cannot consider rural areas in isolation from the population centers that serve us. Like my residents do everything in the town of Gibsons. So at what point, I mean, I really think that at some point in this OCP process, we should say, this goal is unrealistic. it is simply unrealistic, and why are we pretending that we're going to build 3,000 new residences? So that's my first question, and I realize it's a bit of a corker, but at what point do we as a board wish to give some direction on this?
Staff, would you like to respond to the corker?
Yeah, I mean, I think the point to the provincial HNR requirements is that, as noted, it is mandated. So we have to accommodate these. There is a considerable amount of growth already accommodated through ADUs and secondary suites in rural areas, but currently, I think staff had undertaken a study a year or two ago that showed that there is little uptake currently. I think, as the primer attempts to point out, economic conditions are difficult for building right now, particularly in a decentralized way. So part of the efforts at looking at growth areas is to understand whether there may be more efficient ways of building that accommodate at least some of these units or make room for some of these requirements. Ultimately, it is the market, primarily the market, that will be the driver of whether these units actually show up. However, one of the efforts that staff are currently undertaking that's not complete yet is a determination of how many of these need to be below market versus market delivered. And there are tools in the local government tool belt for addressing non-market housing needs, some of which are discussed as general roles in the housing primer itself. So the question of whether the SCRD is responsible for delivering these 3,000 units, I think, is separate from how we accommodate them in an effort to sort of address our provincial legislated requirements under the OCP.
Do a quick follow-up. So theoretically, within our OCP, does the language "we have to come up with 3,000 houses" have to go into our OCP? Or can we provide language to acknowledge growth from a legislative point of view, but without having to put those kind of numbers in?
I believe the language is we need to consider the housing needs reports in our OCPs and consider the accommodation of that housing. My understanding is that the provincial government will not come down hard, particularly on regional districts that aren't meeting housing targets. We are not under a housing target order. We just need to do the due diligence to show that we've accommodated what the HNRs show. And I think that's what the OCP sort of attempts to identify growth areas is seeking to do.
Okay, that helps me, but I'd like to move on to Director Bax.
So talking about this housing thing, looking at the big picture, looking at and tying it in with the DAPR report and tying it in with the OCP integrated framework, I see that there's an opportunity for the regional district to make it to help our constituents, not especially the local residents who are interested in either creating a secondary suite because they're getting older and they don't want to go upstairs anymore. They can build another suite upstairs or something like this, that we have the opportunity to streamline certain types of additional housing on each property. And so if we've got an OCP that has 20 land uses, then this one land use, that there is specific language in there that says you can build up to this. And so that, because as a property owner, who has a small acreage, I have no idea what I'm allowed. And if I go to planning and say, what am I allowed, are they going to be able to give me an answer? And so we have to be able to answer our public and say, if you want to be part of the solution in housing, then this is what we can help you do.
Is that a question or a statement? Okay, because I also, I think this is valuable information, but I don't want us to go down the rabbit holes of the actual information and where we're going to take it. It's more whether or not we are comfortable enough to move these primers forward as resources for the OCP process, where those kinds of questions and discussion points can come up with this as a background. Does that help? So do you have a follow-up, Director Bax?
I have a question about what staff has done here with these technical, and what Senior Planner Thompson has talked about, is that have they pared these technical reports down to the bare minimum that is required under legislation? And so no extra bells and whistles.
Staff, would you like to respond to that?
Thanks. Well, staff can confirm that we haven't undertaken any work that's in excess of what is required by the Local Government Act or that extends beyond the board's direction on this project. I think if I understand the question correctly, there is the question of what kind of housing policy we want to have going forward, and do we want to do something more or different than what we're currently doing or other local governments are doing? And those are all questions to be answered in the future. Thanks.
Okay. Director McMahon.
I, on the other hand, would like more data, because I just sat down with the map and took a little look. So in my electoral area, there are approximately 250 mobile homes in mobile home parks and another 100 RVs in RV parks. And those don't seem to be represented in any way in the housing report. And that's really important because that is a big portion of the affordability issue in my area. And it's missing.
Staff, is there ways that we can resolve
That is one of the questions that we are working to address through further analysis right now. Undertaking, as noted, an analysis of the HNR numbers by affordability level, also a comparison of some of the data that was lacking through the census in the previous HNR, particularly around mobile homes, and we are looking at an affordability analysis. The brief affordability analysis provided in the primer is part of a much larger analysis that is currently being undertaken by staff that will be forthcoming to the board.
GM Hall.
Thank you, Chair. So Senior Planner Thompson offered the technical answer. Thank you. There's also the project answer would also, a project answer could be acknowledging the limitations of the technical work. We're also taking into the next phase of the project the What We Heard report. And as you read in that summary, we certainly heard about housing need. And we heard about housing need from people in manufactured homes and in recreational vehicles. And so that's a consideration that marries with the technical data to the extent that we have it.
I just would like to make sure that, do we need to separate motions for you to follow up on that, or is that happening as is, and roughly the timeline on that?
Thank you,
Go
Chair.
ahead.
Staff, I don't think staff don't feel there's a need for a separate motion. We're aware of some of the gaps in the information we have, and we are working on it. The timeline, we're working with statistical agencies in the province on both access and analysis. And so I hesitate to commit, but it's underway now, and we would very much like to have it as an input to the next round of engagement. Thank you.
Director McMahon.
Right. So, sorry, does that mean there'll be another technical housing report coming?
Staff response?
Thank you, Chair. Staff, yes.
Okay. There were some things that weren't mentioned in this report that I thought should have been overtly mentioned. For instance, that our lot size is primarily determined by Vancouver Coastal Health. That all but one of the mobile home parks on the Sunshine Coast are 55 plus. So there is a desperate shortage of affordable housing for families. Yeah, a couple of things of that sort. And I think just the fact that RVs are not here, they're not represented, is worth mentioning. because it's an increasing a percentage of our housing, like it or not, recognized or not. Another challenge that I'm sure you're aware of is that RVs and mobile homes are differently defined by BC assessment and by the census and by anybody else who wants to come up with another category for it. So it makes it somewhat difficult to accurately, determine what the housing situation is.
So that's more of a comment, and I can see writing furiously. And we also won't be able to answer everything with these reports because there is that fine line between a primer and a tome. But I think these are really good questions that we will get more clarity on as we move forward. Do we have any other questions specific to housing? Director Lee, you haven't commented on it yet.
Thank you, Chair. I guess my question is, if we say yes, we're going to use these technical memos, are we also saying yes, that we agree with all the concepts contained in the technical memos? That's a concern of mine. So
I'll let staff respond to their how they see these being used.
Thank you, Chair. Incorporation of these memos into the project doesn't imply endorsement of any specific policy. Thanks.
Director Lee, a follow-up?
well, it's simply as I read the technical memos, it looks to me like it's pretty specific recommendations to anybody that wants to comment on the OCP. And where we could be leading people in a certain direction with these technical memos. And it's a concern of mine. The original studies didn't do that. The technical memos go on top of the studies and do that. So I think we have to be pretty careful when we say, yeah, we like these technical memos.
I mean, that's a comment. I think it's worth taking. I don't think it's a question for staff at this point.
Well, I would like to see if staff could answer whether I'm right or wrong in my thoughts here. As someone that might be leading a community engagement session, will these be pointed to and say, this is our current thinking? It's a slippery slope in my mind here.
I'm reluctantly going to ask staff because I think this is a board question. I think it's a discussion within ourselves. And if you aren't comfortable, I mean, that is your comment. And I don't think they can interpret your thoughts. But Director McMahon has something sage to respond.
Yeah, I guess the question is, at what point and where do we acknowledge the deficits of the severe deficits of the provincial housing analysis? So maybe the technical reports is not the right place and time. Where do we get to put our feisty statements?
Staff?
Thank you, Chair. If the committee or the board is concerned about provincial regulation or methodologies, that may be an advocacy piece that the board wants to take up. I expect that at points in this project, staff will be surfacing some limitations to data or methods that are important qualifiers that where there could be alignment with an advocacy position. So they may emerge organically through the project. But of course, it's the board's prerogative to advocate when you would like to.
Does that answer your feisty request?
Sort of. The OCP is supposed to be the vision for our community. And if we have a militant vision, then we should get right out there and have a vision. in my opinion. But exactly how we work that in, I am not clear. But I think we'll also hear a fair amount back from the community too about the community's vision, which is not always in keeping with what the province wishes us to want to do. So I just wanted to mention too, in the housing memo, the analysis of the cost of building secondary suites was, wow, that was jaw-dropping. I mean, I realized it was expensive, but I didn't realize it was that bad. I sat down and did the math on it, and if you built a one-bedroom secondary suite and took out a loan on 20-year amortization, that would be $1,800 monthly payments just to pay for the cost of building the suite. Like, who can afford to rent it out at any sort of affordable rate? This is just, it's grim. It's grim.
Director Lee, because I don't think we've fully responded to your concerns. I think we've described some discussion points.
I'm going to try and ask the question in a different manner. And I could use the housing as an example. Is it appropriate to have in your OCP that in this section of land, you're only allowed to build below market housing? Because it says here that we have to have a certain amount of below market housing. We have to encourage it. My fear is that the OCP is going to say, oh yeah, you own all this property, but the only thing you can put on it now is below market housing. That's I can read the technical memo in such a manner that it says that that's what it wants to do. So is that the intent?
I'm going to say no, that's not the intent, but I'm also going to ask staff to provide a sort of reasonable way of interpreting it, because the whole thing around this is what it's going to imply. I'm not seeing it myself, but anyway.
I guess the question is, how far do we take a policy to force an objective?
So number one, these aren't policies. These are background resources to provide information for decision-making. So staff, if you like
The
to,
OCP, though, would be a policy that results from it.
it's a bylaw, yeah.
Thanks, Chair. And staff really want to support clarity on this. The information that's in this primer suggests that there are affordability concerns and there are servicing alignments at a regional level that bear thinking about as we take our next steps. How we reconcile those through policy to be determined. It's also noted that based on our assessed housing needs, there is a need for affordable housing. There are tools we can use, like density bonusing, like housing agreements, and we have examples of those presently on the coast that we could look to use. But again, that's a future policy decision to be informed by another 2 rounds of public participation. So the primer does not, in and of itself, suggest use this tool in this location. There are many questions to be asked and answered before we get there. The purpose here is surfacing that there are these tools, and we want to talk about them in those next steps. And for even further clarity, those tools already exist in some of our OCPs. Thanks.
Does that help?
Yes, it actually does. I do have an instance of that policy that was just mentioned, in that in certain areas you're allowed to have smaller lots if you're going to allow affordable housing. And I like that policy, and it's, yeah, you may if you want. So, yeah, I can see where that could work. Thank you.
Any other comments about housing? I'm not seeing anything that requires us to defer this particular primer. The other one we were going to look at, I think there was some question around number 5, Sunshine Coast pilot mapping. Would you like to talk about that?
Yes. Oh,
So, oh, okay. I thought you said you were okay with.
I am okay with it, but I have a question.
Okay, so we'll go to 5 and then we'll go up to utility. But we have to keep an eye on time because I know we can go down these rabbit holes. There's a lot of information here.
thank you,
Go
Chair.
ahead, Director Bax.
Thank you, Chair. I only have one item that is brought to my attention by my community. At the top of page 122, we're talking about how the local governments have to include certain government acts within our OCP. Now, the two first ones are Federal Fisheries Act, Federal Species at Risk Act, and my community is discussing watershed protection and how these acts can be applied to our watershed protection, and especially around the watershed for the creek known as Roberts Creek, which is the last natural salmon fish stream on the Sunshine Coast. It has a number of different species of salmon that use that. And I was wondering how we can, as a board, apply or make sure that the timber cutting in the watershed is in compliance with these acts. Is that up to my community to report it, or are we to? I know we've sent a letter to BC Timber Sales that we don't want them logging in our watershed, but to me it looks like these particular federal acts that are going to be included in our OCP kind of trump any provincial body, and so I'm concerned that the BC Timber Sales is not following the Fisheries Act. And so I just wanted to bring that to the attention of the board and the public, and I want to make sure that that I want to know, like, is it up to us to report any violation of the Fisheries Act, or is it's a public duty?
Some good advocacy information there. It's not specific to how we incorporate the technical memos, but there is a brief question. If you are able to respond to that, staff, was that clear?
Thank you, Chair. Anyone can report concern about a Fisheries Act violation, and BC Timber Sales is scheduled as a delegation in response to the board's letter. I'm sorry, I don't have the date, but I believe it's in the next month. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions for 5, or we'll go back up to 2? Okay. Number 2 is utility services analysis. You had a question.
Yeah, great maps. We had, I'll be geeking out over these maps for ages, but the last set of fire flow maps I remember seeing, I thought that they were, the gradations or whatever you call, were from 30 liters per second, 60, 90, 120, whatever. This time around, the fire flow is under 55. Then there's a category just for 55 to 60 liters per second, and then we go 60 to 90. And I was really curious as to why we would have a category for just a 5 liter per second difference. Is this we're obviously highlighting it for some reason? And wonder if staff knows.
Staff, do you have a response to that?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. The reason why that category is included is because to highlight that those hydrants are very close to the minimum standard of 60, And in some cases, it can even be just a mathematical standard deviation or an error or measurement error, and those things need to be confirmed in the field. So it's more to highlight that in those areas when we actually do field testing, we could end up at 50 or we could end up at 63.
Does that answer it? Director Bax.
I'm looking at page 104 of the report, and it talks about the Huesum Roberts Creek Village Core, and it says that there's substandard fire flow and water supply capacity challenges, where I looked at the map, and most of the fire hydrants in the downtown core are designated between 90 and 150 liters per second or above, the blue color. And I was wondering, I don't see those two things jiving with each other. Is there a fire flow issue, or is there not?
Staff, would you like to respond? Because these are the kind of questions, everyone loves maps, and these are exactly the kind of questions we expect to get from our communities.
Thank you. Great question. There are, as you might know, there are two indicators for fire flow. One is actual pressure at the hydrant, and the other one is residual pressure. And in this case, there might be some residual pressure issues at the hydrants, and those maps have not been included here.
Follow up, Director Bax.
Some clarification on residual pressure and what that means.
Yes, please.
If a fire truck takes water from a hydrant, it will have an impact elsewhere on the system. And it could actually mean that there are properties, primarily in our case, above that area where the fire truck is pumping water from, that will have no pressure at their properties, and that's called residual pressure. So how much pressure will there continue to be in the remaining of the water system to ensure that there is a minimum pressure at each hydrant, and that's for regular water supply, but also in case there will be multiple fires within a water system. You want to make sure that there is always some pressure at the hydrant.
Thank you. So the last one we were going to look at was the Green Bylaws Toolkit. Nope.
I had a question about I believe it's the natural asset inventory.
Guess we should have just gone through it one by one then.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 4, natural asset inventory.
Yeah, I think that's the one I got. I think the agenda changed. But the maps in the inventory, a lot, they've gone back and there's a good example on page 76. These maps cover the entire SCRD, like all the areas right up Princess Louisa Inlet and that. And, for the OCP, our primary focus is on the populated area along the coast. So I was just wondering if there was any thought of doing more detailed analysis of just our strip.
Steph?
Thank you very much for the question. The scope for this project was looking at every watershed on the Sunshine Coast to provide a high-level summary of our natural assets and inventory their condition, their risk and vulnerabilities. It is possible at future stages of the project to look at a more specific area, and that might be most appropriate as we begin to refine areas that may be suitable for growth.
Director Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I was just trying to figure out what our objective was here. Are we trying to suggest changes to each one of these technical memos, or are we just saying, hey, we like this, we agree to use this, or we don't want to use it?
In the recommendation, it's approved if or refer, and I think we're just getting to some technical questions on the technical memos, not necessarily stating whether there should be more information or we disagree with the information. So some of these questions are just around clarity. Other questions have been, can we add different kinds of information at a later point? That's how I've been hearing this. So far, we haven't required any motions to that effect, but at some point, we need to come back and look at a whole as to whether or not we are willing to move these technical memos to the next point, which is to refer them to APCs, or if you want to take some out, or what you want to do with them.
Okay, thank you.
So are we ready to move on to, oh, okay.
Just
Director Bax.
just a little nitpicking on page 42. It says that the regional's natural assets such as forests, wetlands, lakes, and shorelines. And I would prefer if they included the word creeks in there. Just
Okay, so we're now back at number 4, natural assets. Obviously, I should have gone through this differently because I did ask us to poll things we had questions about. So you can ask for that if that's not a difficult change. So now, like, I think the last one we were going to look at is number 6, Sunshine Coast Green Bylaws Toolkit. Somebody had asked to have that pulled for further discussion. I think that was you, Director McMahon.
Yeah, I'm wearing down. I do think that we're implying a policy direction here. But I'm not willing to really battle it out right now. But we are adding things on the basis of public delegations, which is either great or it's not great, and I'm not really sure because we keep moving away from our core focus. But what the heck, there it is.
Before I ask staff to respond, I would like to suggest that the Green Bylaws Toolkit of itself is demonstrating what is already in our OCP, what is potential gaps, and how to make them uniform across the OCPs. It is part of a delegation, but there was something else that came out of a delegation as well. So as of itself, it doesn't preclude that it should be part of the toolkit. The Environmental Law Society is fairly well versed in how these kind of bylaws are presented. And again, it's up to us how we want to consider them within our OCP. So if staff want to add more, if I'm completely off the wall, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I guess to assist with clarity, staff would highlight that for many years, I don't know when it was introduced into BC legislation, but local governments have been obliged to plan for sensitive ecosystems and to plan for environmental hazards. And the Green Bylaws Toolkit dates back almost 20 years as a guide available for use by local governments in BC for how to accomplish that provincial requirement. And the Environmental Law Centre has done a number of reports analyzing what works and what doesn't. And their analysis for the Sunshine Coast provides ideas for how we might change, improve, keep, or otherwise deal with those legislative requirements as expressed in our current OCPs and what we do next. And if you apologize for repeating this, but there are many questions to be asked and answered. The technical memo tees up what some of those questions might be, but the eventual policy proposals that we might bring you as your public administrators are yet to be determined. And then, of course, it's your decision about which direction you want to give us on those. Thank you.
So we're at the end of our technical memo list. We have a recommendation. Would anybody like to consider the motion? Director Gabias.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to move to approve the technical memos and their corresponding studies. And that's on page, whoops. I'm not sure which page it's on.
Sorry, that's on
Page 23 of the
Yeah.
agenda.
Do I have a seconder? That is seconded. Do I have any other comments? Director Lee?
I would really like to see this referred to our APCs and come back to us again. I don't really see that in the recommendations. I just see that we could be referring them.
Can I just get clarity from staff that as part of the OCP process, these technical memos will be referred to our APCs?
Yes.
I see no other hands, so I'd like to call a question. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Thank you, everybody. That was good discussion. And I think it was important to take the time on those ones because we all need the background. Thank you. So the next question we have, or the next item is, just a simple one. 4.4 Advisory Planning Commission Operations Model Update, starting on page 129. Thank you, staff.
Thank you, Chair. So SCRD has 5 established advisory planning commissions. Earlier this year, changes were made to the operating model for those APCs. Staff recently completed an evaluation, and in summary, the conclusions were that progress was made on some of the goals that were set out before the 2025 changes, but some challenges have resulted, some of which are reflected in feedback received from commission members. APCs are established and governed by Local Government Act Section 461 and SCRD's Bylaw 453, but there's room to change how commissions operate. If the board would like changes made, they can be integrated into recruitment and orientation for 2026. And as operational changes may have resource, technology, or logistical implications, the report recommends that desired changes are built into an implementation plan that's brought back to the committee. Staff are happy to answer any questions.
Directors, questions? Are we wearing you down? Director Lee?
I'll put it in a form of question, even though it's probably more appropriate for a comment, but I'll ask the question. On page 131, it says what could be improved / areas to consider change. And I just went through all the bullets and said, yes, 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 yes. So if we pick the recommendations, I believe that would form the basis of staff reporting back on item 2 in the recommendations. Would I have that correct?
Staff, can you clarify the recommendation?
Yes, Chair. So if the board has specific things from the ideas that are included in the report or other that you would like us to examine and prepare options for implementation, those would be reported back for decision. Thanks.
So you're going to look at what you want to see added for changes? Yeah. So
Did you want me to specify that I'd like
Well,
to see those? Or?
we'll go to Director McMahon and then we
Okay.
can see. Yeah. Director McMahon.
Yeah, we never did figure out our process here, did we? A good report, by the way. I found it helpful. And my APC is pretty clear about what they want. I do think that continued training for the minute takers and also for the chairs of the APCs would be helpful because, you know, we've had a little bit of a challenge there, and so I don't think there is going to be any one size fits all solution. The APCs are also different. However, I am concerned about the turnaround time. If we can establish a schedule so that the referrals can be done from EAS to APC and back to the next EAS within a month, because otherwise it drags out and it's difficult for staff, it's difficult for applicants, and it makes the APCs feel like they're not part of the process. So if we can establish that cycle, that's, I think, really important. My APC would like to meet in person, are willing to go to the rec center rather than Frank West Hall because I believe it has Wi-Fi, making it easier potentially to have a hybrid meeting, and recognizing that a fully hybrid big screen experience is not going to happen. We've already been doing a do-it-yourself hybrid, which is if somebody can't attend, somebody else brings a laptop and they just Zoom that person in. And it's not very elegant, but it does work to enable somebody who can't actually be at the in-person meeting to participate. There's probably more kinks to be worked out. The other thing, the timing, 7 o'clock is better for my APC. They all work. So earlier time slots are difficult. Might be difficult. I'm sure it might be different for others. So are we going to make a series of recommendations for each APC, or how are we going to tackle this?
Yeah, so I can see staff furiously writing down. So can we have these general recommendations as recorded, or do you want specific motion for all of them? What would work better? Because it's right in there that that staff report back with implementation plan that's reflective of the proposed changes. So we really should have proposed changes outlined.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
The more specificity, appreciating that if you can be broad in your specificity, then staff can offer options back. But if there are particular things that directors are looking for in terms of change, it's helpful to staff's next step. Thank you.
So, Scribe, do we have the comments that were made by Director McMahon in terms of a future motion?
Okay, so for the electoral area E APC suggestions, it would be continued training for the recording secretaries and the chair and APC members. Look at the timeline for the feedback between the referrals and the reports coming back to EAS. The APC prefers in-person meetings. It could be at the Gibson's Community Center rather than Frank West Hall. Figure out some hybrid solutions for members that can't make it in person. And this 7 p.m. is the preferred time rather than earlier scheduled time.
Thank you. So we're just going to hold those as recorded, and then we'll add them as part of one motion for staff referral. And without getting too specific, because I'm not thinking of these as area A, B, or C, I'm thinking them as overall APC recommendations. So we can just do one motion. So I'll go to Director Bax because I haven't heard from him yet.
Yeah, what I'm hearing too is the start times are tough. 4:30 for most people that work is a tough one. and prefer to be in person in our community, absolutely. And
So that
those are
recommends,
those are recommendations
those
that
fit
already.
within you, okay.
Yeah.
And Director Lee, you had some? Have they been covered?
I don't think so. I believe that recommendation number 1, they want us to provide some direction on desired changes. And the desired changes I believe we want are on the bottom of page 131, what could be improved areas to consider. So
We have a number of specific requests. Do you have any others to add?
Which ones do we have? Oh, okay, those are the ones I want.
Okay.
No, nothing to add to those. Thank you.
Okay, Director Gabias, do you have anything to add?
No, I think just, being flexible with the location is totally fine, and the time, no additional recommendations. Thank you.
So I just have a comment about this. I think we've spent a lot of time on trying to move our APCs. It's a lot of staff time trying to come to some kind of accommodation over the last couple of years. And I have to note that it's gone from 60% attendance to 61% attendance. So that, I really want us to be clear on how much staff time this is going to take. It's a very important aspect of what we do. But at some point, we have to say, we're good, and be willing to go on without the perfection. So let's see where we can go with this, but let's not try for perfection. Let's just try for this. We're trying to make this work. So Director Lee, have anything more? And then Director McMahon.
Yes, I firmly believe that the distance from Field Road is the issue. And I believe that could be overcome by moving the meetings of the members into an area, but still having staff perform the same function they're doing at Field Road over a remote connection, because I believe it's extremely valuable that the information staff's been helping us with. It's made a big difference. But I went from probably 90% attendance at my APCs to around 2%. Like, I get barely made quorum and I have 9 people. So, and it was only going to get worse. So something needs to happen for me.
Director McMahon.
I actually think that we should look at several different options for staff participation, because my APC came up with several different suggestions. And I would like to get some feedback from staff, because that's the difficult part. It's not the minute taker, it's if we need planning staff. And some of the meetings, we may not need planning staff to attend remotely. So some of the options would be for the APC chair to coordinate questions before the meeting, if there were any urgent questions that were necessary, rather than have a staff member spend the time to come to the meeting. Or if there was a reasonably good turnaround on questions after the meeting. I realize it is complicated having staff Zoom into APC meetings, and we have 5 APCs. So, whatever the options are, that we can bring some expertise to the table but not waste staff time.
I think staff have that as a background. Or my APC in particular does really value having staff at all their meetings. They wouldn't be in a position to do questions ahead of time. It's just not their work level. So anyway, if we don't have any further, go ahead, Director Gabias.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I'm going through all the feedback. I think there seems to be a desire by some or all or most of the APC members to do more And I think that's great. They've got like some informed people who are plugged in, who are passionate, and who have volunteered their time, and that's really great. And I think there's an opportunity here to kind of maybe create something, keep the APC as is, because this is like a very structured, like SCRD sanctioned body that has a really specific role. And then I think there's an opportunity, if these same people are interested in doing more and providing more feedback on different issues, whether it's infrastructure or whatever, to have that group of people connect directly with directors, to have meetings outside of, well, not meetings, but like have discussions outside of the APC. So just kind of like splitting these things apart, teasing them apart a little bit, to be clear what the role of the APC is, because it's very specific, and then what are the other options if people want to be more participative in giving feedback. So, and I know Director McMahon has been engaging with her APC quite a bit, which is great.
Director McMahon.
Well, I'm just thinking too that for the next year or two, we have the OCP process rolling out. So presumably that will feed more, referrals and participation by the OCPs. So maybe what we are looking at is a model that will take us through the OCP process and then reevaluate afterward. Because we were having the problem that we weren't getting enough referrals to keep the APCs active. But at the moment, I think with all the OCP excitement, we can assume they'll have enough to do next year.
Okay, I don't see any more questions. We have a motion. Would directors like that read out, or is it fairly clear what we're voting on? You want to read it up? So we're adding that as part of number 2, and that staff report back with an implementation plan based on the following recommended changes to the APC model. And then we've listed the detail on that. If you'd like to read that back.
Some of the desired changes include continued training for recording secretaries, APC chairs, and members. For staff to look at the timeline between APC feedback and reporting back to EAS. The preference for meeting in person and looking at locations that are closer for the members. Hybrid solutions for members that can't make it in person. And the time is, the preferred time is later, 7 p.m. Okay. And also to look at the attendance of planning staff at the APC meetings, or potentially APC chairs coordinating questions for staff prior to the meeting or after the meeting. And that's, yeah, it looks to be it.
Do I have a seconder? Director McMahon, are we ready to vote? Yeah, I don't think he could hear. That was, yeah. All those in favor? Anyone against? No? Okay. So that passes. Thanks for this. Again, another long discussion, but these are important processes, especially when we're dealing with the official community plan. So our next item is 4.5, request for covenant discharge for 698 and 706 Leak Road. Staff, whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Chair. The SCRD has received a request to discharge 2 covenants relating to tree protection at 698 and 706 Leak Road in Roberts Creek. These covenants were placed on the properties as a condition of rezoning to allow for subdivision. Previous covenant conditions were removed in 2018 and 2020, and only the tree cutting restriction remains. Given that it is not standard practice to require tree cutting covenants at the time of rezoning and subdivision, and that the applicant wishes to cut trees to permit the growing of crops, staff recommend that the covenants be discharged. Staff are available to answer any questions.
Directors, Director Beck.
Yeah, I read over this report and I wholeheartedly agree with staff on this one. And so I would like to move the recommendation as it appears on page 136.
Do I have a seconder? Director McMahon? Just going to hold on a minute. We're just about to vote on a request for decision on page 136. Do you have any questions? The motion is ready. Yep. So all those in favor? And that passes. Thank you very much. Okay.
I longed to do this.
Our next section is communications. We have a communication piece of letter here from Mr. McKay. And it's just here to be received. Okay. Now we have no new motions, but we do have new business. So I refer Director Lee. You had a motion?
Yeah, yes, Chair, I'd like to comment on the 5.1.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yes. I'd like, I have a motion here that staff prepare a report on options and implications of the Pender Harbor Living Heritage Society's request to place a 24-foot by 40-foot portable school building beside the Sarah Ray Hall parking lot. The building would serve as an archival and display space for heritage items that, due to current space limitations, cannot be shared with the public.
And do I have do I need a seconder for just a motion presentation? Okay, I've got a seconder. All those in favor?
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. So new business, we have an item under new business, and that is motion about a letter to Ministry of Transportation and Transit from Director Gabias.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. So pretty simple. I'd like to send a letter to our operations manager to highlight the priorities that we see in our areas, so that they could incorporate that in their work plan for the coming year. I do have a motion ready, so all I need is directors' priorities for their area. And I can start for my area, which is technically not in Half Moon Bay, but affects us nonetheless, would be the turning lane on Sunshine Coast Highway at south end of Red Roofs Road, so that be painted as soon as possible. And so I'll let you go around, and I'll keep notes.
So I'll go next because I'm in the line. So for Area F, it would be supporting safety measures along the S curve on Port Mellon Highway. Director McMahon?
Mine would be a clear action plan on the failing slope at Gower Point Road at 17th Street.
Just like autumn catch-up. You're good? Director Bax?
Yeah, mine would be the reconstruction of the drainage and curb system in front of the Legacy Garden on Roberts Creek Road.
Say it again.
Again, the reconstruction and repair of the drainage system and the curb in front of the Legacy Garden that adjoins the Roberts Creek Community School on Roberts Creek Road.
And Director Lee.
Number one on my wish list would be a clear plan to resolve the crumbling highway that's on Irvin's Landing Road that's falling into Mixel Lake. So a clear plan and timeline to resolve that issue.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to bring this up at tomorrow's rural director meeting, but, and I don't know if it's appropriate for this letter or not, but we're having an increasing number of problems with abandoned RVs along roadsides. And there really is no lead agency, and they're being treated on a one-off basis, but I think that we need to get all of the agencies involved together to start coming up with a better solution, because we keep treating it as if it's not going to happen again, and it is happening again and again and again. And so I don't know if that would be appropriate for inclusion in that letter, but
This is your project, George, so I'm going to let you.
Well, if I may suggest, I feel like that's a bigger advocacy effort that we could take on separately, I think, because it's multi-jurisdiction, like it's more complex. So I think that's something that we could take on separately.
And I have something to add to that tomorrow as well. So, yeah. Director Lee.
Really number one on my list, and I think is for everybody, is if we could actually have a standard that said whenever they fix a chunk of road, they put a active transportation sidewalk in for us, or portion of the highway.
Okay, this letter is starting to octopus out.
But that's probably number one for all of us.
And we still have another portion of the meeting to do, so.
Yes,
yeah.
so in response to that, love it, but we do have a meeting directly with MOTT next week, and that's one of the things that we can advocate for. So I would take that one separately as well, because it's not area specific and a little bit broader.
Thank you. So we have a motion. And I just, if there's no other questions, can we? Yep, you did. That's gonna be quite a bit to read out.
Okay, so the letter is going to include the following priorities. The turning lane on Sunshine Coast Highway and Southland Road needs to be painted. Supporting safety measures on the S-curve on Gambier Island.
Port Mellon Highway.
Oh, good thing we checked.
It's not all about
Okay, and a clear action plan on the failing slope at Gower Point Road at 17th Street. Reconstruction and repair of the drainage system and curb at the Legacy Garden at Roberts Creek Community School on Roberts Creek Road. And a clear plan to resolve the crumbling highway on Irving's Landing Road at Mixel Lake.
At Mixel Lake.
Okay.
Yes.
Do I have a second?
Oh,
Yep.
I guess that's not the motion, that's
No,
the
it's
items
just
in the
or
letter.
within it.
So I can read the motion.
Okay.
So the motion is that the board directs staff to prepare a letter to the operations manager with the Ministry of Transportation and Transit outlining the board's rural priorities for consideration in the ministry's 2026 work plan, and further that the letter include the following priorities, which we just heard, and that the letter be signed by the board chair and forwarded to the ministry.
Seconder? Director Bax? Yes? No? No other questions? All those in favor? And that passes. Thank you very much. So we've reached the end of our public meeting. I always forget, do we go into camera first, or do I just ask for any questions from the gallery? That makes more sense. So any questions from the public in reference to this meeting? I'm just giving you time. No hands.
She's left the meeting, Chair.
Okay. So I'd like to, I move that the public be excluded from attendance in the meeting in accordance with Section 91K of the Community Charter. Negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of a municipal service that are at their preliminary stages and that, in the view of the council, could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were made public. And I have a motion and then a seconder by Director Lee. All those in favor? And we're going into in camera. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. We've come out of our in-camera meeting. I'd like to adjourn the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting for November 20th, 2025. I have a mover, seconder, all those in favor, and goodbye, and thank you.